And now, ladies and gentlemen, Skywalker.
Thank you, Jim Davis. And, you know, I got a message saying I should probably refer to him as his big-time radio name, Big Jim Edwards. Maybe I'll do that from now on. Thank you to our announcer, Big Jim Edwards, for that wonderful introduction, as always. And welcome to the show. You know, I appreciate you tuning in to Radio Memories here. It's already March 2nd, 2022. And boy, do we have a great show for you today. Of course, brought to you by our great friends, the pros at Audio Girl Productions. They are the best in the business. Now, just go to their website and check them out, whether it be production, music, voiceovers, jingles. Contact them for whatever your production needs are at audiogirlproductions.com. And I am so glad to have this guest today, just a radio legend, Damien. He was on KLOS, KMET, you know, in their heyday. And we tried to get him on Zoom, and it didn't work out. So, you know, we reverted to, you know, the old-fashioned method.
Operator.
And have our interview with Damien and show some pictures during the interview here. And I hope you enjoy this. So we're on the phone here with Damien, and he's at his beautiful home in the Palm Springs area. Damien, it is great to have you on the line, and I have just wanted to do this for such a long time, and wonderful to have you on Radio Memories.
Hey, Sky, I'm honored to be part of this show. It's a great show, and it's got a great following, so I always want to jump on things that work.
I appreciate you being on the show and finding time in your schedule. And let's start out where it all began with you.
Well, it begins in a small, dusty-covered wagon. No, it's another story. No, sorry. Radio began back in, Jesus, what year was that? I think it was 68 back in Connecticut, where I had just gotten my first job in radio. I was still in radio broadcast school at the time, and the guy who was running the school, a talent in Hartford called Dick Robinson, he said, get out of the school, you'll learn more in 2 days in that job than you will in 6 weeks here. Mm-hmm. Go do it. Mm-hmm. And he was dead right. But, you know, it was my first show. It was a 100,000 watt FM that had an audience of about 9 people because they were in what's called block programming. So 1 hour you're listening to opera, the next hour it's folk music, and then you're off to the Italian show, and then you're off to a cooking show. It was like such a stew of formats, but it was a great place to learn.
Oh, yes.
And then I got my first rock and roll gig in Waterbury, Connecticut, and that lasted a year or two. I had a great time there. And then I got a little news background because I thought I would need that, and went up to Massachusetts, to Worcester and Springfield, and became news director in the morning show newsman out there.
So at this point, you are experimenting with all facets of broadcasting. You're doing it all.
Well, I wanted that. You know, when I got out of the military, I had 12 jobs in 1 year. I couldn't find out what the hell to do with myself.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, well, what do you do that you really like? Because if you really like your job, it's not a job anymore. It's what you do.
Right.
So I said, I sure like rock and roll, and I like listening to the radio. Maybe we'll take a shot that way. And when I made that decision, got the first initial experience back on the East Coast. It was the late 60s. I had seen Easy Rider. Someone offered me a funny little cigarette one day, and the next thing I know, I'm on my way to California, and my hair's down the back of my head. So the complete metamorphosis, so to speak. So nonetheless, I get to California, and I can't get arrested out there. I landed in San Diego with a couple of friends, and I couldn't get a job to save my butt, man. I just couldn't. because I was still talking like this after having been in top 40, and everybody out here was smoking it and talking like this. And I another lesson to learn, Yeah. Nonetheless, and it was good, and I finally, worked my way back across the country. I worked in New Orleans, and I was working with a guy named Bob Coburn, who ended up in L.A.
Oh, I worked with Bob here, yeah. Yeah,
we became dear friends, actually. We traveled the country and ended up in New Orleans putting an FM on the air, a free-form FM, I may add. Because that's what we were all part of in those days. There was no format. You came on and played what you did, and if you did, and you did it good and got an audience, you got hired. It seemed kind of simple.
Right.
So, Yeah. So we went there and put that on, had a great time. And Bob left there and ended up at ABC in Chicago at WLS-FM at the time.
Right.
I came back to California where I ran into Jim LaFawn, who was my program director at KYMS, and became another dear friend for life. And so we hung together for a good long while. And then Bob called me while I'm living rent-free in Laguna Beach, managing some apartments and working with Jim LaFawn at KYMS. He calls me from Chicago, and he goes, "Hey, send me a tape. I think they're interested in you." So I sent a tape, and it was such a casual thing. I just casually, I started the tape and said, "Oh, wait a minute, I forgot something." Walked out, let the door slam, came back in again. It was just like we were in the same room together. And they loved it. So they hired me at LS-FM, which I said, wait, the big time.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, I had spent one winter in the Great Lakes, freezing. The following winter in the Great Lakes, freezing for corps school. And, of course, I got hired by ABC in November. So it was great, and I enjoyed a great experience. And, we were working in Paul Harvey's studio for our production room when he was on vacation.
Oh, God.
And he was such a conservative guy.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the talents up there, I don't want to embarrass anybody because it was very funny. He got in here and decided to have send us a picture of your girlfriend nude. So we got about 1,000 of them. We posted them all over Paul Harvey's production room. Thank God no one was armed. He would have blown his brains out when he walked in. So, and about that time, I said to myself, this is my third winter in Chicago, and I really don't want to be here. I want to go back to California. And as it turned out, both San Francisco and L.A. had openings, and both had interest, and I ended up in L.A. and glad I chose the market because it was probably the best section of my radio life, those 9 years at KLOS.
And how did that come about?
A lot of it is just sheer luck, Sky. You know that. That's right place, right time. I ended up at KLOS, and FM was starting to really come into its own. For the first time in the history of radio, FM beat AM. We beat KHJ.
Oh, and that was big time and big time news. Yikes. RKO was starting to rethink their entire strategy with direction alt.
Yeah, that was in like 72, 73, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had the California Jam, which was a great event to be a part of.
And there's something that was really big that happened.
Yeah. I ended up, and because of that and other friends in town, I ended up doing the voiceover for the TV show that ran for several weekends for ABC. And that, too, was productive and lucrative. So I really enjoyed the work.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I remember like it was yesterday.
As luck would have it, after I left KLOS, worked at KMET for a bit, and then I ended up working at KLSX.
And what was it like to leap from the big corporate ABC-owned KLOS to KMET, where there's a big difference, obviously, in management style?
Management was different. They weren't as corporately held tight as KMET was loose, and they projected that image, and that's why they started kicking KLOS's butt, is because they were more of the feel of the people, and we were turning more into corporate radio. So I think that was the big difference there. But, hell, I knew these guys for 8-9 years. We doing the same concerts together. And they're friends. They're competitors, but they're friends,
But what do you think happened when all of these popular rock stations that had owned Los Angeles radio suddenly began to drop off?
Well, there was a shift in mass tastes. And don't forget, disco took its toll, and it did.
But disco
Rhythm, blues,
didn't really take its toll here in Los Angeles. It did in New York. But you know what?
What I'm saying is not necessarily disco, but rhythm, hip-hop.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of fun. There was generational shift is how I see it.
And
everyone's got the music of their generation, and then a new one comes along and they bring theirs with them, and that's the way it's supposed to be.
But what I kind of find interesting, Damien, since I was working in the market and I was just a youngster in the business at the time, and what became very obvious, at least to me, is we temporarily lost the top 40 format somewhere, I think, between 1979 and 1982, with a kind of softer version in place on some stations, but adult contemporary had become the format du jour. KLOS, KMET were completely losing its edge. KROQ, the world famous K-Rock, was gaining an audience with a new music that wasn't being played on KMET and KLOS. But KISS seemed to take advantage with the Go-Go's, the Romantics, the Police, with those songs added to Top 40, and it brought that format back to life. And as you and I know, radio has changed so radically. When you were on the air at KLOS, and it was such a great time.
But the thing is, and Sky, you know this, the only thing in the entire history of the world in life that's permanent is change.
Well, sure, it's the only constant.
Everything changes. It's the way we progress through life, So I used to, for a while, I resisted change a bit. And then I realized, what are you resisting, man? Just go along with the flow. Be where you are at the moment, And that made life a lot easier for me.
What was your favorite time in this crazy business that we once called radio?
Oh, I would have to think the favorite time in radio was between 74 and 78. Those were my favorite years.
And why would that? And why would that be?
Well, the California Jam was part of that, which was, a very interesting event, not only to work, but to be that much inside of a concert, because Woodstock was seen from the outside. Cal Jam was being seen from the inside. So it was a totally unique experience, and everybody learned a lot, Yeah. So that was a big point in my life. And the music at that time, I think, was just at its peak. The Stones were crunching it. Zeppelin was rising like a rocket. It was like, wow, really? So, I was very much enraptured with the music of that period as well. But that, too, gave way to a change, But rather than go, well, how come it's not like it used to be? Nothing is, baby.
Changes. Ooh, look out, you rock and rollers.
One of the perks of working in LA radio is we often get to be on TV shows, soap operas, sometimes even big star movies. I was on a few, including a TV show called The New WKRP in Cincinnati, which was a horrible remake, but it paid after scale. I also remember doing a couple of episodes of a soap opera called Santa Barbara, but I know you did your fair share of TV shows, and I found a clip of you on the number one TV show at the time called Baywatch, and I hope you don't mind if I play this clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, On behalf of the Surfrider Foundation, please put your hands together for Scotty Brothers recording artist, Tag! Contagious is available at your local record store as well. You bet. Mama! Hey, we're going to be back with a lot more music from Tag this afternoon. Here he is, Governor Neil Dixon. Thank you.
Tonight at 11, do the night thing.
Now that must have been a lot of fun.
It was great, and I enjoyed a great experience. And
is there a crazy time or just something that stands out in your career?
There were so many of those, you know. I had a chance because there really were. I mean, that's why it was never a job. It was like being at an amusement park every day. JJ, who was another dear friend, and that boy, his passing really nailed me. But JJ was also an East Coast guy out of BC in Boston who came out here and really made a name for himself. And I'll tell you a weird little behind-the-scenes story. At one point, they wanted to replace the program director that they had, and they offered both JJ and I the chair. The deal was whoever was named had to fire the other guy because we were too expensive for him. And we're two of the closest friends there. JJ, Ladd, and I were like the three musketeers. And I mean, I don't want to fire him, you know. And it came down to it. Well, I got the chair, and I took JJ out for lunch, and he knew the game anyway. But as it turned out, I had a friend who had great connections in New York, and this lady ended up buying her own record company, as it turned out. And she had enough connections to get JJ to be the first black MTV jock on MTV. And so he ended up really on his feet and had a great life there, and then came back to California in the end, and we got to spend some more years together. So that was a great memory and a great story. I did not like being PD. I'm not cut out for that. I didn't like it. That was a job. That was a radio job.
Yeah.
Everything I had done up to there was fun. So, yeah. So, there was a lot of lessons learned in the 70s and 80s. But again, what am I going to do? Go to work for a living after all this?
Oh, dear Lord, of course not. Favorite people that you have worked with?
Sadly, I'm losing many of them.
Sadly, we all are.
I got a lot of favorite people. Like I said, JJ, Ladd, always favorite. Haven't seen Jim in years, sadly, but they were my two closest buddies there. But Jesus, I had you know who ended up, two guys being really good friends, was Dave Mason and Ian Anderson. We just somehow bonded. I was on the air on Christmas Day, and the door opened to the studio, and in walks Ian Anderson. Went, and you're dropping by, why? He goes, well, I was at the park. He's up MacArthur Park, and I was writing some song ideas down, and I just thought, seeing it's Christmas, I'd come and thank some of the people who've been supporting me. So we did 2 hours on the air and developed a fast friendship. Had about 11 interviews after that. Visited him at Pinewood Studios in England. Stayed at my house. I mean, it's like, you know, we really got to know each other well. So, and I found him a fascinating person. It's the people that impress me more than anything, the people that I was fortunate enough to run across in this profession. Yeah.
What a wonderful career you have had.
Yeah, like I said, it sure in hell beats working for a living, pal. I woke up every day smiling. You know, if you can do that, no matter what you're going through, you can handle it.
Damion, what a great pleasure to have you on Radio Memories. And you and I have been trying to set this up for quite some time, and I am so glad that we finally got to get this on. And I'm sorry the interview wasn't on Zoom, but I'm so glad that we got this on the air.
So am I. And it's great to be interviewed by a brother who shared the market with me, too. That really helps.
And even though it was on the phone, I think it was great, and I want to get you back on the show. And I hope next time we are on Zoom and we get down to some nitty-gritty behind-the-scenes stories. And I can't wait. Radio legend Damion, my friend, take care of yourself.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm too mean to get hurt or die. Sorry.
Thank you, Damion. And we're going to get you here somehow on Zoom because I know you've got some great stories that you want to share. And what a pleasure. He is such a nice guy and a great radio legend. And it was a pleasure to have you on Radio Memories. And we hope to see you next time for some more great Radio Memories.
Check out past interviews on the Radio Memories YouTube channel and on Spotify. Click the links. This is Maggie McKay for Radio Memories, a Dave Schuyler production.
Radio Memories.